Hey, good evening, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday Wellness. It is April the 28th. We are so excited to end out our Autism Awareness Month with Rachelle Chandler. I have actually known Rachelle since she was born. I've known her whole life. She has been a blessing in my life. She is my niece. She has taught me so much. And I am just going to turn the time over to her because the message she has to share with us about her journeys and where she's going and where she's been is so powerful. And I'm just going to let Rachelle take it away. So welcome, everybody, and stay on because after Rachelle does her presentation, we'll do a question and answer.
Thank you, Eileen. Let me share my screen here. My name is Rachelle Chandler. Thank you for the opportunity to be included in Autism Awareness Month, along with this month's incredible guest speakers. Today, I'm presenting Illuminating Neurodiversity with Firefly Pathways. I've been in the health and wellness industry for the past 20 years as a licensed massage and craniosacral therapist. For the last 8, I've integrated nutritional support to help my clients reach a more optimal state of health. This was my world, and everything was stable. I happily married my best friend, and we started our life together. Little did we know that neurodiversity was hiding in plain sight, silently torturing my husband in ways I never would have imagined. Today, I'm on a mission to help illuminate neurodiversity. After years of working towards a correct diagnosis and learning or creating my own effective strategies to support my family through this life-altering change, it's clear to me that high-functioning autism and neurodiversity is highly invisible and often misclassified as our crazy, quirky family without recognition or support. What are Firefly pathways? The Firefly pathway is my terminology to describe an adaptive concept designed to illustrate the process of identifying a pattern that does not follow a predictable or direct route, but often repeats with variations and illuminates a general direction or intention. I was really inspired by the concept of fireflies and even viewing them here in Georgia, where I live now. It really provided the perfect background and analogy for me to describe the process that I've just been through, because each firefly on its own was just part of a story, and it didn't really tell me anything. But as I really started to connect the dots, this pathway emerged, and I started to be able to identify patterns. Those patterns led me towards the ability to really support my family through our upcoming journey with neurodiversity. And I want to share this concept of a Firefly pathway because it can be very individualized and yet very applicable in the world of illuminating neurodiversity. This process can also be applied to physical, mental, or emotional health events, and it can become a catalyst for proactive responses and signal the need to seek additional professional medical support. This presentation is not meant to diagnose or treat, but simply illuminate my journey. How does this relate to autism awareness? Well, I developed this method specifically to support other families through the time period before a diagnosis, before the evaluation, when all you know is that something isn't right, but you don't know what to research or where to start. This is where I found myself recently, and this is how I worked through the process. And this method can be applied to a variety of examples, but I developed it specifically for autism awareness and neurodiversity. How our story began. Now, I'll do this very quickly, but it's important to have a little bit of background for context. 3 weeks after I got married, my husband's job picked us up and moved us to Denver, Colorado without any warning. I closed my private practice and off we went. It was a rocky transition, to say the least. Now, when I got married, my mother wisely said, now try to only do one of these per year because it's a lot of change. Move, start a new job, get married, funeral, baby. Well, we're overachievers. So we did all 5 in 6 months. The baby did not come to term, so we repeated one. Then over the next 18 months, we repeated a few more. Now, this is a lot for anyone, but for my husband, it catapulted him to a new phase of life, survival. In the 5 years that followed, survival became primal. He was diagnosed with ADHD and medicated with very little relief. We became a family, and within 6 weeks of bringing our son home, both dad and baby were showing signs of distress in different ways. Simple eating, sleeping, self-regulation, and expressing basic emotions were the new goals. What is going on? Where do I even start? What do I search for? Who can I talk to? What is happening? Well, I've been trained as a massage and craniosacral therapist in the concept of structure and function. This became a very grounding foundation for me, and it's where I turn to next. So my training taught me to evaluate structure and function. Function is the natural purpose or expected outcome of a physiological response. Structure is the arrangement or organization of the parts, in this case, the parts of the body that make a person whole. Where I started looking was behavior, because I couldn't see nerves, cells, or organs, but I knew something wasn't right. So this starts to illustrate timelines, milestones. And I went through this process with my husband, and I was completely in the dark. I had no idea what was happening, and episodes turned into chronic events, which went from, months into years. With my son, there are guided milestones, and he's constantly checked in by a pediatrician. So even though we survived everything that happened with my husband, I didn't understand what was happening until I relived the experience with my son and realized that there are specific milestones that when they're missed, they can become a trigger for looking at neurodiversity. So at this point, I started to understand that daily functions like chores, bills, personal projects, hobbies, making new friends, healthy downregulation of a stressful day, these were all becoming cracks in the foundation of my husband's world. My son was a late walker. He was a late crawler. He was late to turn over on his stomach, all things we didn't really pay attention to until he failed his 24-month evaluation and everything sort of illuminated. So that set the premise for what I started to look for. Lack of function or functionality. These are the 6 categories that I started to track in both of their cases, but in very different ways. Because these areas are primary structural support areas, it became easy to start looking for deficiencies. Was it nutrition? Is it genetics? At one point, I thought my husband might have a brain tumor. I really didn't know. So I kept notes. I was vigilant, and a vague pattern started to emerge. Then I started to categorize these functions, and I noticed repeating themes. So 4 of them fell in with the brain, digestion's very clearly the gut, behavior and communication, heart and mind. To quickly show the concept in action, these are the patterns that started to emerge after intentional observation. Now, these are specific to our family, but these are a few of our Firefly pathways. While the presentation for my husband and son were night and day, the themes you can see are generally consistent. And this is how I did it. I just started taking notes like I was back in college. Sleep hygiene is the easiest place to start. Are you sleeping or not? Daily communication became the next easiest place to observe. Mood and emotional regulation. How did you respond to emotional events? Can you process them? Can you move on from them? I was familiar with the concept of tantrums. I was not familiar with the concept of meltdowns or shutdowns, although I did eventually catch up. Transitions. These are things we take for granted. The ability to move from one task to another without rigidity or difficulty. This became part of my radar as I noticed we would get stuck in very simple transitions. What is a transition? Well, transitions can easily trigger boundaries. Boundaries are visible and they can become important in ensuring a proper amount of space and time to execute those daily transitions. This can also apply to an overload of sensory input where boundaries are needed to limit exposure to overwhelming sensory events. Something as simple as my family coming to visit triggered transitions, boundary issues, mood and emotional regulation, and sleep issues. I knew something was wrong. Now, digestion is one of those things that we take for granted. It can be a hidden issue that we adapt to all too easily and forget to consider. However, the gut-brain connection, the gut immune system connection, brings it right back up to the front as a number one issue to observe. And finally, behavior and communication. This is the last category because in my mind, it involves reviewing the whole person and the sum of their verbal and nonverbal expression as an indicator of neurological adaptability. What am I going to do? I've said it earlier, and I'll say it again, that up until this point, I was really fearful that there was something significant going on. Like, does he have a brain tumor? Can I get him to a doctor? Will he please be reviewed? No, he said no at every turn. I felt helpless. I don't know where to start. I mean, if it's a brain tumor, oh my gosh, my brain goes through the options there. And luckily, I did decide to start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And from here, physiological needs stood out. Obviously, it's the base. So it made sense that it would connect directly to the brain, the gut, the heart, and the mind. So here's where I did add meaningful support. First, I researched and scheduled a clinical evaluation, but it is important to know that it can take up to, depends on the place. We waited 3 months for my husband. I'm still waiting for my sons, and we've been on a waiting list for 6 months. I finally went to another location, and that appointment took 2 months to get and is still 2 months out. So there's a considerable amount of time waiting for clinical evaluations that can be turned into proactive action through this process. I researched and removed daily life triggers. Gratitude is really big, and I continue to thank the people in my life for helping me and teaching me. I learned common functional deficiencies in neurodiversity. I found high quality patented products to help us feel better. I started one product at a time, and we evaluated its impact. And then I repeated steps 3 through 7 countless times. When I researched and removed daily triggers, I looked for common themes in neurodiversity. We knew there was an ADHD diagnosis. We did not know there was an autism diagnosis, but there seemed to be similar triggers. So sugar, gluten, white rice, casein, things like mozzarella cheese, which we were eating a lot of daily. These were very easy to remove and replace with healthy alternatives like local honey, sprouted bread, ancient grains, oat milk, almond milk, goat cheese, Parmesan cheese. These things just, they flipped out very fast. We didn't even miss them, and everyone started feeling better. We also learned the common functional deficiencies. Nutrient absorption, I learned right away, was an issue. Well, likely due to gut inflammation. So the nutrients aren't getting absorbed. So that means your body's not getting what it needs to build its immune system or the brain. Detoxing, I understood to be an issue. So antioxidants is something I need to look for. Compromised immunity. Yeah, well, they were both getting sick often. It made sense. Could they have a balanced diet? Well, I don't know. They're both very picky. How am I supposed to get all these greens and grains into these individuals who will only eat 5 things? So I did find high quality patented products to help us feel better. And I was looking specifically for B vitamins, antioxidants, prebiotics, probiotics, and omegas, fish oils. Now, I filled this out based on our family. It will be different for everyone, but I wanted to show you some of the solutions and how we got there. Axio decaf was the very first thing I tried. And oh my goodness, one of my triggers with my son is that he didn't have enough focus. He couldn't sit and read a book. He just needed to keep moving. And he's a young toddler. So to not be able to focus on a board book and get through more than 3 pages, it was alarming. This Axio really helped him to regulate and improve his focus. He was less irritated. He slept, he could go straight to sleep. That was big. Introducing the regular Axio also improved mood. Our mental and emotional responses seemed to be easier. Conversations seemed to be easier. That's big. Transitions and boundaries, I found personally, and I know this isn't on the bottle anywhere, but this is how it helped us, is that it just seemed like there was greater capacity for new things, a stronger immune system, better flexibility, less stress. I even found they were sweating less. They're just, affected by the heat. And I think in my mind, it was probably linked to inflammation or the reduction of. The probio and the prebiotic fiber, I love this combination. It has made a very marked difference in how they both spend their time and just their physical comfort throughout the day. And plus, it made it easier to adhere to the gluten-free and sugar-free diets. Mood and behavior and communication, the omegas are a really big deal. And I know that when my son is 29 months, and he's still not speaking English. It's toddlerese. We don't know what he's saying, but he's very expressive and he thinks that we understand. But when he really starts to struggle, I'll give him another dose of his omegas. And he is so excited when he gets his LifeVantage products that he actually will ask for them. He'll point to them and he'll get really excited by them. And I put a lot of these together in the blender. And he asks to push the button, I want to push the button. And when he's feeling a little overwhelmed, he'll ask for the omegas and he will actually just eat them and he'll calm down and go back to his toys. So I know that even though he's nonverbal at this point, he also knows what makes him feel better and he asks for it. So that's a really big indicator for me that these products do work. But our big takeaway from our story, and actually what was happening behind the scenes, was what our doctor referred to as cellular or genetic overload. And this is the best way I can describe it, is because everything in our daily life needs access to electricity. It needs an input. It needs a place to go. It needs an outlet. But if our bodies are so focused on inner world processes like free radicals, sugar, lack of physical exertion, it's easy to take your child to occupational therapy, but to get an adult on the treadmill for the same benefits, a little bit harder. Stress reduction, gluten and casein, it's comfort food. So, you have to really monitor it. But if this is how you're spending your plugs is on these stressors, then you start adding things like a new job or a move or a pandemic to it. The cracks are going to show. That's what happened with us. I want to bring us back really quickly to this slide just for illustrative purposes, because one of the things that I did notice and I went back to, and I could see the pattern, is that in both cases, development was on a track and some event happened that pulled them off their track, and they both experienced a regression in development. And it looks really different in an adult than it does on a child. But in an adult, it's difficult to analyze. But when that pattern is there and you're putting all the little fireflies together and you're starting to see how they connect, neurodiversity does not have to be so invisible. It can be illuminated. And so that's what I hope to share with you today. And we remain committed to maintaining balance. The brain, the gut, the heart and mind, these are always our focus. And we do that by constantly adjusting, reevaluating, and observing. From day to day, those fireflies may illuminate a different path, and everything is important. I have learned that every piece of data that I captured was relevant at one point in time or another. Learning to observe is like seeing fireflies for the first time. May you be guided on your journey too. I'm Rachelle Chandler, and I appreciate this opportunity to share this with you.
Thank you, Rachelle. Oh my gosh, that was amazing. And I love the way you broke it down of how we can help our family and loved ones. And you've been through so much, and I appreciate you be willing to share that. So I want to I've jumped in so fast because I was so excited to hear your presentation. So we are here with Wednesday Wellness to help people to be well, get well, and stay well. We have all met each other through a like-minded company. And so anything that you've seen on here today, that if you have any questions about what these were, you can get back with Rachelle or get back with the person who shared this video with you, because they can help guide you and help you on your journey and put those fireflies together the best you can. But we are grateful to have you, and we will be back next Wednesday, as we are every Wednesday. And please invite back your friends and family as we touch on every health topic, and we love to have your input. Thanks for watching, and remember, one change can have an enormous effect. Remember to subscribe, hit the bell and the like, and we'll see you next time on Love to Live.